Rain hammered the windshield as I sped through the night. One thought in my head: don't die tonight. Then my phone lit up again. Jack. 47 missed calls. The man who swore he'd kill me if I ever left. I rolled down the window and threw the phone into the storm. But it was too late. Before we get into the story, don't forget to subscribe. We share new stories here every day, and you won't want to miss any of them. Also, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in. Now let's begin. The next headlights in my mirror weren't random. He'd found me, 300 miles behind me now. The sound of shattering glass on wet asphalt felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 2 years. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, knuckles bone white in the dashboard glow. Just keep driving, just keep breathing, just make it to morning. Dawn broke gray and exhausted over a city I'd never seen before, somewhere between nowhere and freedom. My gas tank read empty. My bank account held $247. My body carried bruises in the shape of his fingerprints. That's when I saw it. Harrison's coffee house sat on the corner of Lexington and Main like a lighthouse in the storm. Warm amber lights glowed through rain-streaked windows. Through the glass, I could see normal people doing normal things, laughing over lattes, reading newspapers, existing without fear pulsing through their veins. Maybe here, I whispered to the steering wheel. To God, to whoever was listening. Maybe this is far enough. 3 days later, I stood behind the counter in a crisp black apron, my name tag reading Jess O., not Jessica Owens. Not the woman Jack was hunting, just Jess, just someone new. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled, a language I was still learning. The smell of cinnamon and burnt coffee clung to my clothes, my hair, my skin. It felt like armor, like I could be someone else if I just pretended hard enough. "You're doing great," Sarah said, the assistant manager who'd hired me with barely a background check. She had kind eyes and laugh lines that suggested a life I'd forgotten was possible. Most people burn themselves at least twice on their first day. I forced a smile, didn't mention that burns were nothing new. That I'd learned to work through pain, to hide it, to pretend it didn't exist. The morning rush ebbed and flowed. Regulars whose orders I was beginning to memorize. Office workers grabbing fuel before another day in their cubicles. Students camping out with laptops and headphones. Normal people, safe people. Then the atmosphere shifted. I felt it before I saw him, the way conversations dropped to whispers, the way Sarah straightened her posture, the way even the espresso machine seemed to quiet its mechanical screaming. He walked through the door like he owned it. Because he did. Dark hair slicked back with deliberate precision. Tattoos winding up his wrist beneath an expensive watch that cost more than my car ever had. A tailored black suit that didn't belong in a place that smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. He moved with the kind of calm that only comes from absolute control, the certainty that nothing in his world happens without his permission. My chest tightened with recognition I couldn't name. This wasn't Jack's explosive rage, the kind that shattered dishes and bones with equal enthusiasm. This was something colder, more calculated, infinitely more dangerous. He took the corner table near the window, not facing the cafe, facing the street, watching, always watching. Sarah nudged me gently. Table 7 wants his usual. What's his usual? Black coffee, nothing else, ever. My hands shook as I poured it. The cup rattled against the saucer. I steadied my breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The panic management technique I'd learned from YouTube videos in gas station bathrooms during my escape. I approached the table, set down the coffee, tried not to exist too loudly. He looked up slowly, and his eyes were sharp enough to cut, assessing me the way someone might assess a piece on a chessboard. Calculating value, determining threat level. Reading every secret I tried to hide. New here? His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Somehow that made it worse. Yes. The word came out smaller than I intended. Just started this week. His lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. "Welcome to Harrison's." He returned to his newspaper. I returned to the counter on unsteady legs. Only after he left, flanked by two men in suits who never ordered anything, never sat down, never stopped scanning the room, did Sarah lean close and whisper, "You know that's Eric Harrison, right? He owns the place." Ice water flooded my veins. Because Eric Harrison didn't look like a man who owned a coffee shop. He looked like a man who owned people. And I'd spent 2 years learning exactly what that looked like. The interview had been almost too easy. Sarah, mid-40s, kind eyes, sensible shoes, had asked me 3 questions. Did I have food service experience? Could I work mornings? Was I comfortable with cash handling? I'd lied about the first, told the truth about the second, and nodded enthusiastically at the third, even though the thought of open cash registers made my palms sweat. Too easy to skim, too easy to track. "We'll need a background check," Sarah said, sliding paperwork across her desk. "Nothing invasive, just the basics." My heart had stopped, but I'd smiled, filled in the form with my careful lies. Jess O., birth date shifted by 3 years, previous address in a city I'd never lived in. When she'd called 2 days later to say I was hired, I'd cried in the gas station bathroom for 20 minutes. The false name had passed. I was real again, or at least, I was real enough. The first week blurred together in a haze of steam and muscle memory. The espresso machine became my meditation, the ritual of grinding beans, tamping grounds, timing shots. The register with its simple logic: scan, total, tender, change. The regulars with their predictable orders: Mrs. Chen's oat milk cappuccino, Detective Rodriguez's triple shot Americano, the college student who always asked for whatever has the most caffeine. I memorized them all, not just their orders, their patterns. Who sat near the door, who watched the street, who lingered too long. Old habits from survival, impossible to shake. Sarah noticed my vigilance but misread it as eagerness. "You're a quick study," she said during my 3rd shift, watching me navigate the morning rush without breaking stride. "Mr. Harrison will be pleased." "Does he come in often?" I asked, wiping down the espresso machine. Something flickered in her expression, not quite fear, but close. Respect tinged with wariness. "Not often, but when he does, everything runs smoother. People behave better when he's around." I didn't ask what she meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. By Friday, I'd noticed other things too. The black SUV parked across the street, its engine running, its occupants invisible behind tinted windows. It arrived at opening and left at closing, a shadow I couldn't shake. The 2 men in expensive suits who came in Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. They never ordered, just stood near the window, scanning the room with practiced efficiency, then left without a word. The way conversations dropped to whispers whenever someone mentioned Mr. Harrison. How his name alone shifted the atmosphere, made people straighten their spines and lower their voices. I told myself it was none of my business. I was here to disappear, not to ask questions. To make coffee, collect tips, save money, and eventually move somewhere even farther away. But at night, alone in my studio apartment above the laundromat, I couldn't ignore the similarities. The control, the watchfulness, the way fear masqueraded as respect. The apartment was barely more than a box, 12 feet by 15, with a kitchenette that consisted of a hot plate and mini fridge, a bathroom the size of a closet, and a mattress on the floor I'd bought from Goodwill. But it had 3 deadbolts on the door, a fire escape outside the window, and a direct view of the street below. It was safe. Or safe enough. I'd cataloged every exit within the first hour, timed how long it took to reach the fire escape, noted which floorboards creaked, which neighbors kept odd hours, where the security cameras were positioned. Some habits you can't unlearn. Friday night, as I locked up Harrison's, Sarah trusting me with keys after just 5 days, I caught my reflection in the darkened front window. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. The woman staring back had hollow eyes and sharp cheekbones, copper hair pulled into a tight bun, black apron still tied around her waist. She looked like someone playing the role of normal, hitting all the right marks but missing something essential underneath. She looked haunted. I touched the glass, my fingertips meeting hers. "This is temporary," I whispered to my ghost self. "Just until it's safe." But standing there in the amber glow of the coffee shop's lights, the black SUV idling across the street, I wondered if I'd traded one kind of dangerous for another. And worse, I wondered if I'd even noticed the difference until it was too late. He didn't fit. That was my first thought when Eric Harrison walked into his own coffee shop on a gray Tuesday morning. Everything about him was wrong for the space. Too sharp, too controlled, too expensive. Dark hair slicked back with the kind of precision that suggested a morning routine more complicated than mine. Tattoos wound up his wrist beneath a watch that probably cost more than every car I'd ever owned combined. His suit was tailored so perfectly, it looked like armor. The atmosphere shifted before he'd taken 3 steps inside. Conversations didn't stop. That would have been too obvious. But they softened, muted, like someone had turned down the volume on the entire room. Mrs. Chen straightened in her seat. Detective Rodriguez glanced up from his newspaper, nodded once with something that looked like deference. Even the espresso machine seemed to quiet its hissing. Sarah appeared at my elbow, her voice barely a whisper. "Table 7, black coffee. Don't make him wait." My hands trembled as I poured it. The cup rattled against the saucer, a sound that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. I steadied my breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The panic management trick that had gotten me through gas station bathrooms and motel parking lots. Eric Harrison took the corner table near the window, not facing the cafe like a normal customer, facing the street, watching. I approached with the coffee, my instincts screaming in a language I'd learned to speak fluently over 2 years with Jack. Danger, predator, run. But this was different. Jack's danger had been explosive. You could see it building in his jaw, his fists, the way his voice climbed octaves before the strike. This man's danger was a still lake over deep water. Calm surface, unknown depths. He looked up as I set down the coffee, and his eyes were sharp enough to dissect me, reading every tell, every fear, every secret I'd tried to bury beneath copper hair dye and a false name. "New here?" His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Yes." I forced the word past the tightness in my throat. "Just started this week." His lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile, something more knowing. "Welcome to Harrison's." I nodded, mute, and retreated to the safety of the counter. He stayed for exactly 23 minutes. I know because I watched the clock, hyper-aware of his presence like an electrical current humming beneath my skin. He read a newspaper, but never turned the page. Just sat there, coffee untouched, watching the street with the focus of a man waiting for something specific to happen. The 2 men in suits I'd noticed all week positioned themselves at opposite ends of the cafe, one near the door, one near the back hallway. Not customers, guards. I understood that now. When Eric finally left, he placed a $100 bill on the table for a $4 coffee. Sarah rushed to collect it before I could. "Leave it," she said, her voice tight. "It's not for you, it's a message." "What message?" She didn't answer, just pocketed the bill and busied herself wiping down tables that were already clean. Another employee, Marcus, early 20s, art school dropout, sidled up to me after Eric's car pulled away. "You know that's Eric Harrison, right? He owns the place." "I know." "No, I mean, he owns the place." Marcus's emphasis was heavy with meaning I couldn't quite decode. "Be careful. He's not—" He stopped himself, glanced around. "Just be careful." That night, I dreamed of Jack. He found me in the coffee shop, his face twisted with rage, his hands already reaching for my throat. I backed against the espresso machine, the heat of it searing through my shirt. Nowhere to run, no words that would stop him. Then, Eric Harrison stepped between us. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, just stood there with that same terrible calm, and Jack's hands fell to his sides. In the dream, I couldn't see what Eric did, only that Jack crumpled like paper, soundless, and Eric turned to face me with eyes that held no warmth. "You're safe now," he said, but his voice sounded like a cage locking shut. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat, unsure which man terrified me more, the monster I'd escaped or the one who'd just promised to protect me. Eric Harrison became a fixture at Table 7. 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, he arrived at exactly 10 a.m., after the morning rush had thinned, but before the lunch crowd descended. Always the same table. Always black coffee. Always watching the street like he was waiting for the world to prove him right about something. I learned to pour his coffee before he sat down. Learned the precise moment to approach, not too eager, not too delayed. Learned to exist quietly in his presence, the way prey learns to move through a predator's territory without triggering the chase. We never spoke beyond the necessities. Coffee. Thank you. A nod of acknowledgement. Nothing more. Until the espresso machine betrayed me. It happened during the Wednesday lunch rush. I was 3 shots deep into a complicated order. Oat milk latte, extra foam, 2 pumps vanilla, 1 pump hazelnut, exactly 140 degrees, when the steam wand hissed and spat, boiling water across my hand. The pain was instantaneous and complete. White-hot agony that turned my vision gray at the edges. The cup I'd been holding shattered on the floor. Ceramic shards scattered like shrapnel. I bit down on my scream, old habit, learned response, and clutched my burned hand against my chest. Eric appeared before I'd taken my next breath. I hadn't seen him move from Table 7, but suddenly he was there, his hand gentle on my elbow, steering me toward the back room. "Sarah," he said, his voice cutting through the lunch rush noise without rising above conversational volume. "Cover the counter." In the back office, he guided me to a chair and examined my hand with surprising gentleness. The burn was already blistering, angry red welts across my palm and wrist. My body shook with suppressed pain, old reflexes screaming at me to minimize, apologize, make myself smaller. "I'm fine," I whispered. "I can work through." "You're not fine." He retrieved a first aid kit from a cabinet I'd never noticed, his movements efficient and practiced. "And you don't have to work through it." He cleaned the burn with careful precision, his touch so gentle it made my chest ache with something I couldn't name. The bandage he wrapped was professional grade, the kind that suggested this wasn't his first time treating injuries. "You've been through worse," he murmured, securing the gauze. My heart stuttered. "How would you know that?" His eyes met mine, dark, assessing, but not unkind. Nothing like Jack's eyes when they'd inventoried my body for places that wouldn't show bruises. Eric's gaze held something different. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. Just an observation. But we both knew it wasn't. Over the following weeks, I noticed other things. Small details that accumulated like evidence I was too afraid to examine. The way Eric positioned himself at Table 7, always with a clear line of sight to the counter, to me. How his men, I understood their purpose now, shifted positions whenever I moved through the cafe. The black SUV that followed my route home one evening, maintaining exactly 3 car lengths behind, then disappearing when I reached my apartment. Sarah pulled me aside after closing one Friday. "Mr. Harrison asked about you." Ice water flooded my veins. "What did he ask?" "How you're settling in. If you're comfortable, if anyone's been bothering you." She studied my face with something like pity. "Be careful, Jess. He protects what's his." "I'm not his," I said automatically. Sarah's smile was sad. "In this place, we all are." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the building sent my heart racing. Footsteps in the hallway, the creak of settling wood, the distant wail of sirens. I thought about the burn on my hand, Eric's gentle touch, the way he'd known I'd been through worse, the way he seemed to see straight through my carefully constructed lies. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made myself tea on the hot plate. My studio apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in, the 3 deadbolts suddenly feeling less like security and more like evidence of the prison I'd built. I thought about Jack. About the night I'd finally run. The way he'd screamed that he'd find me, that I'd never be safe, that I was his and always would be. Then I thought about Eric Harrison, sitting at table 7 with his calm that felt like ownership. And I realized with sick certainty that Sarah was right. I'd escaped one cage only to find myself in another. The bars were different, gilded with expensive coffee and gentle bandaging, but they were bars nonetheless. The question wasn't whether Eric Harrison was dangerous. The question was whether his danger might be the only thing keeping Jack's danger at bay. Eric requested me specifically for the deep clean. "My office needs organizing," he'd said that morning, sliding an extra 100 across the counter. "After closing, Sarah has the key." I should have said no. Should have made an excuse, claimed exhaustion, suggested someone else. But rent was due in 3 days and my savings account mocked me with its double digits. So at 9 p.m., I found myself in Eric Harrison's private office with a dustcloth and growing unease. The space was sparse, dark wood desk, leather chair, filing cabinets that looked expensive and impenetrable. No photos, no personal touches. Just the functional minimalism of a man who kept his life locked away. I was wiping down the bookshelf when the drawer slid open. Not forced, just poorly latched, responding to the vibration of my movement. Papers spilled across the floor in an avalanche of secrets I wasn't meant to see. My real name stared up at me from the top page, Jessica Marie Owens. My hands went numb. The dustcloth fell from my fingers. The file was thick. Too thick for someone who was supposed to be Jess O, nobody from nowhere. Police reports with Jack's name highlighted in yellow. Hospital records from the 3 times I'd gone to the ER claiming I'd fallen, slipped, walked into a door. The restraining order I'd filed and Jack had violated within 48 hours. Photocopies of my real driver's license, my social security number, my mother's address in Ohio, a place I hadn't been in 5 years because Jack had made it clear what would happen if I tried to leave town. My vision blurred. The pages swam together. Then I found the recent entries, dated from last week. Jack's current location, tracked across 3 states, each restraining order violation documented with clinical precision. Witness statements from women in Colorado and Missouri who'd reported a man matching his description asking questions, showing my photo, making threats. He was hunting me. Still. Always. At the bottom, in handwriting I recognized from the rare notes Eric left for Sarah, 3 words that made my blood run cold: protect, monitor, intervene if necessary. The file slipped from my shaking hands, papers scattering like evidence at a crime scene. "You weren't supposed to find that yet." I spun around. Eric stood in the doorway, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, expression unreadable. Not surprised. Almost like he'd expected this moment, planned for it even. "You investigated me." My voice cracked. "You know everything." "Yes." No hesitation, no shame. The background check, the one Sarah did, was real and insufficient. He stepped into the office, closed the door behind him with quiet finality. I needed to know who I was protecting. "I didn't ask for your protection." "No." His calm was infuriating, immovable. "But you needed it anyway." "You had no right." "I had every right." His voice didn't rise, but something in it sharpened. "Men like your ex don't stop, Jessica. They escalate, they obsess, they hunt." He gestured to the scattered papers. "He's violated 3 restraining orders in 2 months. He's crossed state lines. He's asking questions in every city between here and where you ran from." Tears burned my eyes. "So you just, what, decided to spy on me? To invade every corner of my life?" "Everyone who works here gets vetted." Eric moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. "Everyone. Because this coffee shop isn't just a business, it's a sanctuary, and I don't let wolves into my sanctuary without knowing exactly what kind of teeth they have. I'm not a wolf. No, you're prey pretending to be invisible." His eyes held mine. "But Jack Parker is very much a wolf, and he's getting closer." The room tilted. I grabbed the desk for support. "How close?" "Close enough that I've had men watching your apartment for 3 weeks. Close enough that I've intercepted 2 attempts to access your employment records from coffee shops in neighboring cities." He paused. Close enough that you should be grateful I'm the kind of man who does his homework. The violation warred with grudging understanding. He'd seen everything, every bruise, every lie, every moment of weakness I'd tried to bury, but he'd also seen Jack, seen the danger I'd been trying to outrun. Everyone here is running from something, Eric said quietly. Sarah's ex-husband put her in the hospital twice. Marcus witnessed a murder and testified. Even Mrs. Chen, her son's in witness protection. I'd rather know your demons than let them surprise us both. I stared at the scattered papers, my life reduced to documented trauma. This is insane. This is survival. Eric bent down, began gathering the pages with careful precision. You can be angry. You can hate me for it. But you're alive, Jessica. And as long as you're under this roof, you'll stay that way. He assembled the file, held it out to me. It's yours. Burn it or keep it. But understand, I won't apologize for keeping you safe. I took the file with trembling hands, our fingers brushed, and the contact felt like a contract I hadn't agreed to sign. What happens now? I whispered. Eric's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Now you decide if you can live with being protected by someone like me. He left me alone in his office, surrounded by the wreckage of my secrets, holding the evidence of both my past and his unsettling vigilance. And despite everything, all I could think was, at least someone finally sees me, even if that terrified me more than anything. I couldn't sleep. The file Eric had given me sat on my kitchen table like a live grenade, and every creak of my apartment building sent my heart racing. At 2 a.m., I gave up, grabbed my keys, and walked the empty streets back to the coffee shop. The lights were on in Eric's office. I should have left. Should have respected the boundary. But something pulled me forward, the same instinct that recognized broken things in other people. I used my key. He didn't startle when I appeared in his doorway, just looked up from the photograph in his hand, a bottle of whiskey catching the lamplight, and said, "Can't sleep either?" The woman in the photo had his eyes, dark and knowing, but hers held light his never did. She was young, maybe 20, laughing at whoever held the camera, vibrant, alive. Her name was Sophia, Eric said quietly, not asking why I'd come. My younger sister. I stepped inside, drawn by the rawness in his voice. A wound that hadn't healed, never would. He set the photograph down carefully, as if it might shatter. She married young. He seemed charming. The words came slowly, like stones he'd carried for years. Everyone loved him. He brought her flowers, called her beautiful. By the time I noticed the isolation, she was already trapped. My throat tightened. I knew this story. Different names, same ending. The violence started slow, Eric continued, pouring whiskey into a second glass, though I hadn't asked. Control first. Then bruises she explained away. I tried to intervene, offered her money, a place to stay, protection. She protected him instead, said she could fix him, that he was just stressed, that love meant staying. He pushed the glass toward me. I took it. She was 24 when he shot her. Then himself. I was on my way to her apartment, finally convinced her to leave. I was an hour too late. The confession hung between us, heavy with guilt that no logic could absolve. I'd seen that weight before, in my own mirror, the shame of survival. I swore that night, Eric said, meeting my eyes, no woman under my care would die unprotected. Not one. Suddenly, everything made terrible sense. The background checks, the watchfulness, the men stationed outside my apartment. Not control, prevention. This coffee shop isn't just a business, he continued. It's a promise I made to her. I understood him now. The way he looked at me, he wasn't seeing me. He was seeing Sophia. Every woman who walked through his door afraid was her ghost. Another chance to save what he'd lost. Jack almost killed me, I heard myself say. The whiskey burned going down. The final night, he had his hands around my throat, said if he couldn't have me, no one could. I grabbed a lamp, hit him, ran. I didn't pack, didn't plan, just ran until I couldn't run anymore and ended up here. Eric's jaw tightened. How long were you with him? 3 years, each one worse than the last. You should have killed him. The bluntness startled a laugh from me, dark, bitter. I thought about it, every day. I see her in every woman who walks through that door afraid, Eric admitted quietly. It's not rational, it's not fair to you, but I can't. His voice cracked. I won't be too late again. We sat in silence as dawn crept through the window, painting the office in shades of gray. Two people shaped by violence, bound by understanding no one else could share. Eric poured us both another measure. The whiskey tasted like forgiveness neither of us deserved but desperately needed. 4 months of fragile peace had almost convinced me I could breathe again. I'd stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed, stopped flinching when men walked too close. I laughed at Marcus's jokes, remembered customers' orders, even went to Sarah's birthday dinner without scanning every exit first. I'd started to believe I might be safe. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon during the lunch rush, a voice I knew better than my own nightmares. Long time no see, Jess. Jack stood at the counter, smiling that terrible familiar smile. The one that preceded apologies, that preceded violence. Same leather jacket, same cologne, same predator's eyes that had hunted me across 3 states. My body knew him before my mind caught up, muscles locked, vision tunneled. The cup in my hand slipped, shattered against the floor in an explosion of porcelain and coffee. Nice place you got here, Jack said conversationally, leaning against the counter like we were old friends. Real cozy, real hidden. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. 3 years of conditioning had turned me back into prey with just his presence. Did you really think you could disappear? His voice dropped, intimate and poisonous. That I'd just let you go? How? The words scraped out. How did you find me? Jack's smile widened. Baby, I'll always find you. You're mine. You've always been mine. He reached across the counter. I backed away, hitting the espresso machine, trapped. You need to leave, now. Eric's voice cut through my panic, cold, absolutely calm, nothing like the gentle cafe owner I'd come to know. He stood in the doorway to his office, transformed into something lethal and immovable. Jack barely glanced at him. Who the hell are you? The man telling you this is your only warning. The door chimed. 2 men from the black SUV entered silently, positioning themselves on either side of Jack with professional precision. Not threatening, just present, just ready. Jack's bravado flickered. You can't. I can. Eric moved closer, each step deliberate. And I will. Jack lunged for me. His hand never made contact. One of Eric's men had him immobilized instantly, arm wrenched behind his back, face pressed against the counter. Professional, efficient, brutal. Eric leaned down, whispered something in Jack's ear I couldn't quite hear. But I saw Jack's face go pale, saw the fear finally break through his arrogance. Get him out, Eric said quietly. They hauled Jack toward the door. He twisted back, spit flying. This isn't over. You hear me, Jess? This isn't... The door closed behind them. The entire encounter had lasted less than 3 minutes. My legs gave out. Eric caught me, guided me to the back room as the world tilted sideways. My lungs wouldn't work, couldn't breathe. Eric's hands on my shoulders, solid and grounding. Jessica, look at me. Breathe. I gasped, drowning in air and terror. You're safe, he said firmly. He won't come back. You don't know him. The words came out broken. He doesn't stop. He never stops. He'll come back. He'll find a way. Neither do I. Eric's eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them, holding something that should have frightened me, but instead felt like the only solid thing in a collapsing world. He won't touch you again. I promise you that. But promises meant nothing against obsession. That night, I stood at my apartment window watching the black SUV park below. Armed men took positions at both entrances. A 3rd vehicle arrived, more security dispersing into shadows. Eric's protection had become a cage. But as I finally closed the curtains and triple-checked the locks, I realized something. Some cages were meant to keep monsters out, not prisoners in. And maybe, just maybe, this cage might save my life. Headline appeared during my afternoon break, sandwiched between celebrity gossip and weather updates. Man found dead in alley, Jack Parker, 34, gunshot wound. My phone slipped from my shaking hands, clattered against the break room table. Jack's photo stared up from the screen, his driver's license picture, that smug smile I'd once mistaken for confidence. The article was brief. Body discovered 3 days after his disappearance, single gunshot to the chest, no suspects, investigation ongoing. 3 days, the same night he'd found me. The room spun. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up. Eric walked in that morning like nothing had happened, poured coffee, greeted customers, reviewed inventory with Sarah. His hands were steady, his expression unreadable. He didn't look at me once. I made it through my shift on autopilot, muscle memory taking orders, making drinks, smiling on command. My body moved while my mind screamed. When the last customer left and Sarah locked the door, I stood between Eric and his office. "We need to talk." He paused, keys in hand. "About?" "You killed him." The words felt like stones in my mouth. Eric's expression didn't change. "I protected you. You murdered him. I eliminated a threat." His voice remained calm, matter of fact. "There's a difference." Rage ignited through my shock. "You had no right." "I had every right." Eric stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the empty shop. "He would have killed you eventually. They always do. The statistics don't lie, Jessica. Men like Jack Parker escalate until someone's dead. You should have called the police." His laugh was bitter, humorless. "The police had a restraining order. 3 of them, actually. How well did that protect you? How many state lines did he cross before someone stopped him?" His eyes held mine. "Sometimes monsters find what they deserve. I made sure he never touched you again." The truth crystallized, sharp and devastating. "You're no different from him." For the first time, emotion cracked through Eric's control. "How am I like him?" "You both controlled me." My voice broke. "You both decided what was best for me without asking. You both took away my choice. He wanted to own me. You just wanted to play God with my life instead." Pain flickered across Eric's face, quickly suppressed. "Maybe, but at least I used my control to keep you alive. That doesn't make it right." "No." His admission was quiet, final. "But it makes you breathing." I tore off my apron, threw it at his feet. The fabric landed between us like a surrender flag in the wrong direction. I didn't escape one cage to live in another. I walked toward the door, past the espresso machine I'd learned to master, the menu board I'd helped redesign, the sanctuary that had become something darker. Eric didn't follow, didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. He never forced, and somehow that made everything worse. Because it meant he believed he'd done the right thing, would do it again, would always choose my survival over my autonomy. "Jessica." I stopped, hand on the door. "He was going to kill you. That night or the next or the one after. I've seen it too many times." His voice carried the weight of his sister's ghost. "I won't apologize for making sure you lived." I left without looking back, leaving the smell of coffee and unspoken violence behind. That night, I packed my apartment through tears. Clothes thrown into the same duffel bag I'd carried across 3 states. The file Eric had given me still unburned. My few possessions that had started to feel like the beginnings of a life. But this time, I wasn't running from an abuser. I was running from my savior. And I didn't know which was more terrifying. 6 weeks later, I shelved books in a quiet store across town and pretended I'd found peace. I hadn't. Sleep remained elusive. Eric's face haunted crowds. And every day, I checked the news obsessively. Jack Parker's murder remained unsolved. Investigations stalled. No suspects. I existed in a half-life, safer than before, but not healed. Not even close. They cornered me on a Tuesday evening, 2 blocks from my new apartment. Men I recognized from Jack's photos, his friends, his enablers, the ones who'd laughed when he described what he'd do when he found me. "Jack said you were a runner," the taller one said, backing me against a brick wall. Guess he was right. My voice died in my throat. 3 years of terror collapsed into this moment. No escape, no salvation, just the inevitable violence I'd been fleeing. The gunshot split the air and the tall man crumpled. Eric emerged from shadows like something conjured from my nightmares and desperate prayers. His white shirt was spattered with blood. The second man fled. Eric let him go, his focus entirely on me. He approached carefully, like I was something fragile he'd already broken once. "They were following you," he said quietly, "for 3 days." Reality clicked into place. "You were watching me." I never stopped. He helped me to his car, his touch gentle despite the violence still hanging in the air. My legs wouldn't support me. I hated that I needed him. Hated more that I was grateful. "You were right to run from men like us," Eric said as he drove through empty streets. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Then why did you come?" "Because some of us use our darkness to protect. Some of us learned from the women we couldn't save." He glanced at me. "I'm trying to be better. Failing, mostly, but trying." I clung to his blood-stained shirt anyway, hating myself for it, needing him despite everything. 2 weeks later, I walked back into Harrison's coffee house. Eric sat at his usual corner table, nursing black coffee, looking older somehow. Tired. He didn't acknowledge my entrance, didn't presume anything. I approached. "I'm not here for forgiveness." "Neither am I." He gestured to the empty chair. "I just wanted to see if you were okay." "I'm not." I sat down, the familiar smell of coffee grounding me. "But I think I will be, if I stop running." "Then sit down," he said, though I already had. We talked, really talked, about Sophia, about Jack, about the cost of survival and the price of protection. About the impossible line between saving someone and controlling them. "I'm trying to walk away," Eric admitted. "From the violence, from that life. It's harder than I thought." "Maybe we both need to learn how to live without running or controlling," I offered. His lips quirked, almost a smile. "Deal." The agreement felt fragile as spun glass, but it was something. 1 year later. The new sign read, J&E Roasters. I co-owned it now. Eric had stepped back from his empire, mostly. Some threads were harder to cut than others, but he was trying. We both were. Some mornings, when I poured his coffee and caught him watching me smile, his eyes softened with something that looked like hope. I was in therapy. He was too. My insistence, his reluctant agreement. We were learning how to trust without controlling, how to protect without possessing, how to build something that wasn't based on trauma. The black SUV still parked outside occasionally. Some habits died hard. A new employee started on a Monday, jumpy, afraid, hiding bruises under long sleeves. I recognized myself in her eyes immediately. Eric and I exchanged a look, an understanding. I approached her with a gentle smile. "Welcome to Harrison's, you're safe here." And I meant it. That evening, Eric and I sat at the corner table, 2 cups of coffee between us, morning light streaming through the window. Not a fairy tale ending, we'd never have that. Too much blood, too many ghosts. But something real. Imperfect people trying to heal, finding redemption one espresso at a time. Eric's hand found mine across the table. I didn't pull away. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For letting me choose to stay." His fingers tightened around mine. "Thank you for staying." Outside, the city woke up. Inside, 2 survivors learned what it meant to live instead of merely survive. 1 cup of coffee at a time.